The Charles Bridge in Prague, Czech Republic, is one of the more heavily trafficked tourist destinations in Central Europe. Each year, countless visitors walk across the bridge, take pictures of the ornate statues lining the causeway, and move on. But this picture is a little different. It's a photo that tells the story of Prague's tumultuous history through the eyes of one man for whom that history was very real. And it's a photo 44 years in the taking. This is the man in question.
Hello, my name is Roman Bode. I'm an international lawyer and an amateur photographer living in the Netherlands. I was born in the predecessor to the Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia, during Communism. When I was 14, I escaped with a part of my family, becoming a refugee and leaving the rest of my family and my friends behind.
Roman fled his home country and its oppressive communist government. There had been a few attempts to push back against that regime. The Prague Spring in 1968 saw a new leader trying to democratize the government and give the people more personal freedom, but that was quickly stamped out when the Soviet Union enacted the Brezhnev Doctrine, which gave them the right to intervene in any Eastern Bloc country with capitalist sympathies. The Soviets and their allies launched a bloody invasion. Times were dark, and Roman's family felt the strain.
I left Czechoslovakia in 1979. My father, who traveled abroad as part of his work as an engineer, was increasingly pressured by the secret police to collaborate with them, to report what he had seen in the West and with whom he met and spoke. He knew that refusing collaboration would set the regime against him and his family, so he decided to escape. He didn't tell me all this until we were on our way in neighboring Hungary. There he explained to me his decision and gave me the choice to return to Czechoslovakia alone, to join my mother and brother, or continue as a refugee with him and my sister.
Roman continued with his father and found refuge at the Austrian consulate in Yugoslavia, but he didn't forget about his home. As a refugee, he kept a close watch on Czechoslovakia, waiting for something good to happen. And 18 years later, while he was living in Chicago, it did.
You can imagine how transfixed I was by the news when I started to hear about demonstrations against the communist regime in the fall of 1989.
This was the Velvet Revolution, which started as a small, peaceful student protest, but soon became violent at the hands of the police, which in turn fueled outrage. 500,000 people joined the movement. A week later, 75% of the country went on a general strike, and the communist regime was finally forced to step down.
I returned for the first time 13 years later, with my fiancée Molly, after the fall of the communist regime. It was the first time I saw my mother and my brother again.
And for Roman, that homecoming meant a return to the Charles Bridge, too.
Since then, Molly and I and our 3 sons returned to the Czech Republic often, always visiting Prague and always making it a point to visit the bridge, which seems like the center of the whole country. The fog made the streets look empty and monochrome, just the way Prague lives in my mind, and the way I had imagined it all those years I could not visit.
Of course, the spirit of protest is very much alive today. It just looks a little different. Check out this next video on protest in London that may or may not be over a bowl of cereal.
So now, imagine walking down a street at night in one of the most vibrant cities in the world, only to find it's eerily quiet. There are no lights on in the houses because, well, nobody's home.
And as always, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.